I'm Sunita Viswanath of Hindus for Human Rights. Today is the 30th anniversary of the destruction of the Babri Masjid and the 66th anniversary of the death of Dalit rights leader and architect of India's constitution, Bhimrao Ambedkar. I want to start by taking us back in time. Around 500 years ago, during the reign of the Mughal Emperor Akbar, a poet named Tulsidas wrote a retelling of the Ramayana in the Awadhi language. Tulsidas's Ramayana, known to us as the Ramcharitmanas, is one of the most popular versions of the Ramayana today. I want to open with a verse from the Balakand, or the opening chapter of Ramcharitmanas, in which Tulsidas describes Rama as Gayi Bahar Garib Nevaju, Saral Sabal Sahib Raghuraju, restorer of what has been lost, protector of the poor, all good, all powerful, the Lord Raghuraju. Today, on the 30th anniversary of the Babri Masjid demolition, I want to draw your attention to a few parts of this verse. For Tulsidas, Ram is Garib Nevaju, protector of the poor, which comes from the Persian Garib Nawaz, a title more commonly associated with Sufi saints. Tulsidas describes Rama using the word Sahib or Lord, which originated in Arabic before coming to North India. However, most heartbreakingly to us today, Tulsi's Rama was the restorer of what has been lost. In the words of Urdu poet Kaifi Azmi, on December 6, 1992, Rama was condemned to a second exile, Dusra Banbas. Despite what Tulsidas wrote 500 years ago, Rama can no longer be restorer of what has been lost, thanks to his own so-called followers. Recently, the filmmaker Anand Patwardhan came to New York, the city where I live, and I had the opportunity to see a few of his films again. If you watch Ram Ke Naam, Jai Bhim, Comrade, and Vivek, you will have a front seat view of India's descent into Hindutva or Hindu nationalism. The demolition of the Babri Masjid by Hindutva extremists 30 years ago today was a major day of victory for Hindu nationalism. But it was a day of horror and heartbreak for all of us who care about Hindu democracy, for faithful Muslims whose medieval mosque was destroyed, and for Hindus of conscience, like me, whose faith would never permit such an abominable act of hate. On 16th November 1993, Baba Lal Das, a Hindu priest featured in Patwardhan's documentary Ram Ke Naam, was shot dead. In 1949, 1 year after the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi by Hindutva adherent Nathuram Godse, idols of Lord Ram were smuggled into the Babri Masjid. Since then, the mosque was never used as a Muslim place of worship, but Hindus did worship the smuggled-in idols. Baba Lal Das was the appointed priest for the smuggled-in idols of Lord Ram and presided over Hindu worship in the compound of the mosque from 1983 onwards. Patwardhan was worried about Baba Lal Das's safety after he spoke against Hindutva and against the Ram Janmabhoomi project in Ram Ke Naam, but the priest was fearless, and he even distributed copies of the film. In 1992, Lal Das was fired from the post, and in 1983, killed. The Ram Janmabhoomi movement grew throughout the past 3 decades. One of the BJP's campaign promises, which got Narendra Modi elected as India's Prime Minister in 2014 and again in 2019, was the construction of a Ram Mandir on the Babri site. The nightmare that has been unfolding before our eyes since the BJP took power is following the blueprint written by Veer Savarkar and his contemporaries, the founders of Hindutva ideology, 100 years ago. Months after Modi's second election, his government took away Kashmir's autonomy through the abrogation of Article 370. They banned the internet in Kashmir for 18 months, brought in thousands more troops to a state which was already one of the world's most militarized. They imprisoned elected officials from all parties, not to mention countless young boys and men, activists, protesters, and dissenters. Just a few months later, on November 9, 2019, the Indian Supreme Court made a decision regarding the Babri Masjid. Ram Lalla, baby Ram himself, was the plaintiff, arguing that he was born exactly where the Babri Masjid stood. The court decided that while it was a criminal act for the idols of Lord Ram to be smuggled into the mosque in 1949, and while the destruction of the mosque was another criminal act, the site of the Babri Masjid would be given to Hindus for a Ram temple, and another 5-acre plot of land nearby would be allotted for the construction of a mosque. 1 year after revoking Kashmir's autonomy, and I don't think the date was a coincidence, on August 5, 2020, the foundation stone was laid for the Ram Janmabhoomi temple. Modi and other leaders traveled to Ayodhya in the midst of a pandemic lockdown. The ceremonies were broadcast in Times Square, New York City. Diaspora groups, including Hindus for Human Rights, then barely a year old, protested. This year, a Hindutva extremist, Sadhvi Ritambara, did a U.S. speaking tour to raise money for Hindutva organizations. This was someone who was extremely active in the Ram Janmabhoomi movement and who actively participated in the mosque destruction 30 years ago today. A hate monger. Again, diaspora groups protested and even got some of her events cancelled. Diaspora advocacy led to Ritambara's visa to the UK being revoked. Whether it is the broadcasting of the Ram Janmabhoomi Temple Foundation ceremony in Times Square, the inclusion of a bulldozer, the ultimate symbol of Hindutva's hatred of Muslims, since Muslims' homes and mosques are demolished with bulldozers, in the India Day Parade in Edison, New Jersey, or the raising of the RSS flag on Parliament Hill in Canada, there is a clear message being signaled around the world. Hindutva is in power. It is time for all of us who choose love over hate to stand up, now more than ever. Those who have fought on the front lines throughout the rise of Hindutva power in India, people such as Anand Patwardhan and Teesta Setalvad, and so many, many more, they have not stopped fighting and they never will. What has been missing in the resistance to Hindutva is the vocal presence of Hindus in large numbers, Hindus like Baba Lal Das, Hindus like the members of Hindus for Human Rights, whose faith is rooted in love, not hate, peace, not violence, inclusion and pluralism, not Hindu supremacy. Hindus for whom Lord Ram needs Sita Devi by his side. Hindus whose response to the atrocities of caste and Hindutva is not in our name. We are building a platform, a movement of fierce resistance to Hindutva hatred, and invite Hindus who are ashamed of the direction India is headed in, ashamed that those in power today celebrate the destruction of a medieval mosque and celebrate the assassin of Mahatma Gandhi. On this 30th anniversary of the Babri demolition, I invoke that brave priest Baba Lal Das, who gave his life to defend not only his principles, but his faith itself. He says in Ram Ke Naam, I am the Mahant of the Ram Janmabhoomi temple, and I can tell you, no one in the VHP has ever prayed in this temple or brought a single garland. Those who speak of a Hindu Rashtra and create violence in the name of Ram are all from the upper castes, and they all love the good life. They do not show an iota of humility, sacrifice, or public concern. They merely exploit people's religious sentiments in order to maintain their own lifestyles. They never speak about public concerns. But today, there are large religious institutions whose wealth runs into billions, and instead of going by foot, They travel by air with air conditioning and first-class tickets. So where we once renounced worldly comforts in order to meditate and work for the public good, now we are so fully immersed in worldly matters that we can only think in material terms. What can you say of today's religious leaders? They merely perpetuate the material order. Big businessmen say, defend the Hindu religion, and the country's rich claim to be devotees of Lord Ram. Was it Ram's ideal that 90% of the people die of starvation? Shouldn't our religious leaders be concerned with the poor? If you have money, or if the rich listen to you, shouldn't you use that money to serve the poor? That was Baba Lal Das in Ram Ke Naam. The words chanted by those who demolished the Babri Masjid were, Kashi Mathura Bhaki Hai. Indeed, court cases are in process, which will probably result in the destruction of the ancient mosques in Kashi and Mathura, unless we speak up now. I ask my fellow Hindus if, like me, you believe that God is everywhere, in every living creature, every rock and every pebble. How can we let our faith tradition be hijacked by extremist ideologues who are motivated by hatred and the quest for power? We may not be able to turn India around anytime soon, but this hateful course will run its course. And each one of us, particularly Hindus in India and around the world, will need to answer what part we played in India's descent into Hindutva hell. We in Hindus for Human Rights are inspired by the Hinduism of Baba Lal Das. We believe it is our dharma, or religious duty, to defend the best of our faith against the aberration of Hindutva ideology. Commemorate this solemn day, which is also the death anniversary of Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar, by joining us. Thank you.